Good morning, everyone. My name is Kate Stewart, and I'm the president of the League of Women Voters of Greater Tucson. Thank you so much for joining us today for this very important program on ballot initiatives, past and present, democracy in action. If you've ever wanted to learn about how ballot initiatives work in Tucson and in the great state of Arizona, you've come to the right place. We are a nonpartisan political organization encouraging informed and active participation in government. Our league in Tucson is celebrating its 80th anniversary this fall. We started opening up all of our programs with a land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that the League of Women Voters of Greater Tucson is on the land and territories of indigenous peoples. Today, Arizona is home to 22 federally recognized tribes, with Tucson being home to the Tohono O'odham people and the Pasquayaqui people. The League of Women Voters is committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and strives to build relationships with sovereign Native nations and indigenous communities through educational programs, voter outreach, and advocacy. And now I'd like to turn it over to one of our members, Mary Ganopol, who will be moderating our program today. Thank you so much, Mary.
Thank you, Kate. I'm excited the topic of ballot initiatives was chosen for this month's voter education program. We're familiar with ballot propositions with their 3-digit numbers, Prop 206, 207, 208, but what about ballot initiatives and their voter-driven campaigns? People often turn to the League of Women Voters for information about current ballot initiatives. We will hear from each panelist for approximately 12 minutes, followed by a Q&A session for the last segment of the program. We encourage you to join in the conversation. If you're watching on Zoom, please type your questions into the Q&A box. And if you're on the Facebook live stream, please put your questions in the comment section. Our first panelist is Cindy Soffrin from the League of Women Voters Speakers Bureau. Cindy moved to Tucson about 8 years ago from the Washington, D.C. suburbs where she was born and raised. She earned her bachelor's in accounting at the University of Maryland, College Park, and worked in the audit department for the Washington, D.C. office of Pete, Marwick, Mitchell and Company. Her career also included positions as a fiduciary accountant at a large international law firm and various other positions in finance. She joined the league soon after moving to Arizona and began participating in her local unit meetings. The Speakers Bureau has given her the opportunity to give many presentations on topics such as election integrity and gerrymandering to schools, churches, senior facilities, and OLLI classes. Today, she will provide an overview on ballot initiatives in Arizona, their history and their challenges. She has also participated in the League's annual Legislative Day held at the Capitol. In addition, Cindy enjoys gardening, reading, exercising, yoga, and tap dancing. She is a member of a senior tap and jazz dance group called the Rodeo City Rockettes. They perform at various events and the proceeds are donated to local nonprofits. Welcome, Cindy.
Today, I'll be speaking to you about power to the people. The Arizona economy was based on railroads and mining companies at the time that they were becoming a state, and the workers were very influential in the making of the Constitution. They brought to the table progressive ideas such as the 8-hour day and a ban on child labor. And they also asked that the mining inspector be an elected position as opposed to appointed position. And they also brought the initiative, referendum, and recall ideas, and those were incorporated into the convention. We'll discuss those in a minute. The citizens did not favor legislatures running roughshod over the populace, and that is why they put all those stopgaps in the Constitution. But it appears currently that the Arizonans are becoming more supportive of restrictive laws. The most important things are the initiatives and the referenda. The initiatives allow citizens to bring forth laws that they want to put on the ballot for everybody to vote. And the referendum is allowing the citizens to veto laws that were made in the previous legislative session. These are specific. There are specific rules for these initiatives and referendum. The first thing you have to do is you have to identify a funding source. And there was a caveat in there that said you may not repeal laws that are immediately necessary for the public peace, health or safety, or the support and maintenance of the departments of the state governments and state institutions. And that is very important because that's coming up later, and I'll show you how it's affecting today. If two measures on the same subject are being provided by the populace, then they are the points of contention are based on the number of voters who vote for that choice. So the initial steps are that you have to file a brief with the Secretary of State. Now, then your group can go to the Legislative Council for review just to make sure that your text is compliant with the law. After that, the statutory requirements for what petitions must say have to be fulfilled. And then it goes to a joint legislative budget committee where there's a fiscal review to make sure that your funding is going to cover the cost of your initiative. Next comes signature gathering. Now, this is based on the number of votes that you need is a percentage of the votes that were cast in the immediately previous gubernatorial race. So if you're going to put forth an initiative, the number of signatures you need to get in order to get that initiative on the ballot is 10% of those votes. If you want to propose a constitutional amendment, the bar is raised to 15% of the votes for the governor. The previous governor race. A referendum only needs 5% of votes of the governor's votes. So there is a no distribution requirement, which means you can get your signatures from any part of the state. You can get them all from Pima County. It doesn't matter. As long as you have the right number, your initiative or your referendum gets on the ballot. Now, the big thing came up with paid circulators. Paid circulators can come from anywhere. They're usually paid by the signature. They have to register with the Secretary of State, and they have to provide a notarized affidavit that says they are aware of that they are eligible according to the rules, and that they have knowledge of our election laws. But any circulator who's violated election laws in the past, felons who have not had their civil rights restored, or anybody who's been convicted of a fraud or a forgery is disqualified. And that makes a lot of sense. But it's also a requirement that petition sheets must be organized and formatted in a specific manner. And if that doesn't happen, then your petition, that petition sheet is thrown out completely. During signature verification, which comes next. So the verifying of the signatures is done by the Secretary of State, starts with the Secretary of State, and they remove all those that are not in the proper format. Now, when I arrived here 8 years ago and I was signing petitions in front of the library or wherever, you could just sign your name. But now they have said that it has to be in between the lines. And so if the Y in my name goes underneath the line, they can disqualify my signature. Now 5% of those forms goes to the county recorder offices for the specific counties, and they verify the signatures. They have 15 days to do that. Goes back to the Secretary of State, who has 72 business hours to project the number of valid signatures based on the verified signatures. Now, if there have been legislative tamperings with initiatives, but that it is not allowed. The legislature, by majority vote, and that's a super majority, any changes they make must further the purpose of the measure that's at hand. Sometimes the legislature and the governor tamper in different ways, and we'll look into that just a little bit later. So there are three measures that are definitely on the 2022 ballot, and it comes through the legislature. None have been citizen, and I shouldn't say that because yesterday a citizen initiative or a referendum was filed and it was put on the ballot. But these are the three that I knew of when I was studying this. The first was for repeal of in-state tuition for non-student residents. And that is that is to pull back a Prop 300, which was filed in 2006, which allowed in-state tuition for non-citizen residents. So that's what I'm saying, that the populace is now becoming more and more restrictive in their thought process. The second one from the legislature requires citizen initiatives to cover a single subject. Currently, that is not required of citizen initiatives. The only ones that have to have a single subject are the ones that are put forth by the legislature. So the legislature is a little annoyed that the citizens get more leeway, and so they've put forth this on the ballot this year that citizens have to follow the same rules. The last one is that they allow the legislature to amend or repeal certain voter-approved ballot measures if they contain provisions ruled unconstitutional or invalid. That's something that the citizens will be voting on. Now, as far as the legislature fooling around with the citizens' initiatives, it isn't easy to even get even though your initiative is passed into law, doesn't necessarily mean that everybody is going to follow it. So in 2020, if you all recall, there was a Prop 208, which provided for a 3.5% surcharge on a tax bill for the wealthy, and that was defined as $250,000 for single taxpayers and $500,000 for joint taxpayers. All of the funds from this prop were supposed to go to support teachers and in salary and in their aides and in bus drivers, and also mentoring new teachers. And there was an academy that was encouraging younger people to go into teaching. But in 2021, the legislature, right along party lines, passed a tax law, SB 1828, that negated that, because they made a law that said that they made a tax law that lowered the brackets for taxes from 4 to 2, and after a certain point, everybody is supposed to pay 2%, and that is basically a flat tax, which is very harmful as far as tax revenues are concerned. There are other qualifications. They say that taxes go away after they raise $12 billion, but we won't go into all of that because it's just not, a flat tax is not a good law. A referendum action has been started, and if you see a petition, sign it, please. So they're trying to get enough signatures now to put it on the ballot for 2022 to veto that. So it's a referendum to veto the law that the legislature passed to combat the proposition that the people passed in the year before. But as soon as that referendum was filed, the legislature filed a lawsuit that said that their law was necessary for public peace, health, or safety, and for the support and maintenance of departments of the state governments and state institutions. So it's up in the air right now, and we'll see what happens in the fall, in next fall, and see how far this gets.
Great. Our next speaker is Celina Martinez Washburn. Celina, the daughter of farm workers, is a community organizer for Healthcare Rising Arizona, working with community and healthcare leaders throughout the state. While a college student in Texas, she organized with the Student Farm Worker Alliance on projects to help alleviate farm worker poverty. This led to become an organizer for the Service Employee International Union Local 5 in Texas, and later the SEIU United Healthcare Workers in California, where she organized groups of hospital workers to raise workplace standards. She moved to Arizona 4 years ago, and her current passion is educating voters about the Predatory Debt Collection Protection Act, which she will talk about today. Petitions are now being circulated on this initiative, which will cap the interest rate on medical debt and protect some assets from garnishment by debt collectors. She is also co-president of the local PTA at her children's school, and she enjoys camping, gardening, and playing board games with her kids. Thanks for coming today, Celina.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for the introduction. So my name is Celina Martinez Washburn. I'm a community organizer with Healthcare Rising Arizona. Thank you all for having me here. It's such an honor. Today, I want to talk a little bit more about Healthcare Rising Arizona, what we do, what we stand for, and what we believe. So we fight for the rights and protections of healthcare workers and patients across the state. Our goal is to bring voices together of people who have been impacted by our healthcare system and use our collective power to push for real policy change to make our healthcare system better. So we've done it through policy work. We are using the ballot initiative process, which thank you for that educational piece. And so far, we're also working on becoming a self-sustaining organization. Currently, we're being sponsored by SCIU, United Healthcare Workers, but there are 669 community members who are regular people out there in the communities who are supporting this organization. So we're growing, and people are finding out about the work we're doing, and they're joining forces with us. So our initiative this year, it's called the Predatory Debt Collection Protection Act. So what it does is that it would increase the protections for people's assets against medical debt collectors. So it would protect more assets from being sold to pay off medical debt collectors. It would ensure that people are able to keep more wages in their bank account and reduce the amount of wage garnishments and limit the outrageous interest rates that tend to trap families into an unending cycle of debt. So currently, a home is only protected up to $250,000. Anything over than that, medical debt collectors can place a lien on your home. I was speaking to a woman 3 days ago who had a lien placed on her home by Banner Health for a $1,300 bill. And when she paid it off, a year later, she received a letter stating that the lien had finally been removed. So it does happen. There's people out there with these stories. The other thing is that medical debt collectors can place a lien on your home if your car is worth more than $6,000. So this doesn't take into consideration with our brothers and sisters who have disabilities and might need vehicles with modifications. So we want to increase the value and protection of these vehicles. The other thing is that medical debt collectors can increase the interest rates up to 10% every single year. Imagine that. It's almost like having a credit card. You're trying to keep up and paying, if you pay the minimum debt, like the minimum payment, it will increase over time. And lastly, wage garnishments. I was talking to a man who got up to 30% of his wages garnished. And that could take a huge toll on people, especially if you're living paycheck to paycheck. And so that's what we really want to do. We want to increase the protections of a home, a vehicle, assets, what you can keep in your bank account, and make sure that people are able to get by. Typically, the people who have medical debt are people who have healthcare insurance. A lot of people, there's this myth out there, the only people that don't have medical debt are people with no healthcare insurance. And I'm here to vouch that that is a lie. I currently am fighting a $2,300 bill for an MRI that I had at Simon Med. They told me I was in network, and the doctor who read my MRI was out of network. And so this happens. Our ballot initiative is sponsored by this amazing woman. Her name is Sherry Brown. She is an RN with an who is autoimmune compromised, and her doctor told her she cannot work due to COVID. But she is a person that will have to go through chemo for the rest of her life. And so once a month, she gets medical treatment. While she was transitioning healthcare insurance, she was told that she was still in network at Mayo Clinic. And so she went in, she got her chemotherapy. And when she went to go pay her copay, the receptionist's face dropped. And he's like, you're no longer covered by your insurance. So she was now responsible for a $49,000 medical bill for one chemo treatment. And there's lots of stories like this. And so I also talked to my neighbor who her cousin is still carrying on her mother's medical debt, even though she has passed away. So it's such a shame that we have to deal with this, but that's why we've united and we're working to increase these protections. One of the ways we're collecting signatures is through volunteers. As you already know, we have a very difficult process here in Arizona. It's very easy for paid circulators to get subpoenaed. And that's what we learned last year with our ballot initiative. We had a ballot initiative called Stop Surprise Billing and Protect Patients Act. Our goal was to protect people with pre-existing conditions, because at that time we didn't know what was going to happen with the Affordable Care Act. Our goal was to stop surprise billing and as well as give healthcare workers a raise. We got a lot of opposition. We had opposition from Governor Ducey. We had opposition from the hospital industry, from insurance companies. And so even the Chamber of Commerce, and one thing I was telling Mary yesterday is that I was so baffled as to why the Chamber of Commerce would be opposing our ballot initiative. But it turns out that the hospital CEOs sit on the board. So after I discovered that, it made completely sense. But yes, paid circulators can get subpoenaed, which means it's easier for them to really audit their signatures and toss signatures away. Last year, each petition has to be notarized. And last year they tossed signatures away if the notary stamp was stamped too lightly or too dark. It was a ridiculous process and we faced a lot of scrutiny. So we're having healthcare rising hubs, pop-up events, and community leaders, people who have never collected signatures, have been going out there and helping collect signatures on the weekends, on the weekdays. We're going to events. We're hosting driveway events, which has been really beautiful to see. But these are just a couple examples. We were at the state fair collecting signatures as well. So it's been pretty amazing. One of the really great things that I'm so excited to talk about is that we have partnered up with RIP Medical Debt, Rest in Peace Medical Debt. And they're a beautiful nonprofit that abolishes Arizona medical debt. So for every dollar that is donated, they forgive $100 worth of medical debt. And so since we partnered up with them, for every signature that we collect, $100 will be forgiven of medical debt. It's pretty amazing. And I am so excited about it. I've talked to people who signed the petition. I let them know about that, and they are just in awe. And they tell me, like, I can't believe my signature is going to help forgive somebody's debt. And so I want to share a little clip that talks a little bit more about RIP medical debt, because I want to highlight them as well. So let me go back and share this with you.
Half of all debt is medical. There's $1 trillion of debt that is unpayable and won't be paid, but it'll continue to be collected on until I abolish it.
This is Craig Antico. In 2014, he founded RIP Medical Debt with his co-founder, Jerry Ashton.
We're a charity that buys medical debt and we abolish it.
It doesn't make sense for America to have people burdened with $1 trillion worth of medical debt. You and I are one accident or one illness away from being destroyed financially.
Before Jerry and Craig were debt abolishers, they were debt collectors, a job they didn't necessarily enjoy.
I never liked the debt collection business. I was in a family business. I ended up starting to make money early, and then it was so hard to not make money anymore, so I stayed in it.
As a bill collector, collecting millions of dollars in medical associated bills in my career. Now all of a sudden, I'm reformed. I'm a predatory giver. We can thank Occupy Wall Street for that.
Okay, let's back up a bit. Occupy was a global progressive protest movement centered around social and economic inequality. The first Occupy protest was Occupy Wall Street. It started in New York City in Zuccotti Park, right outside of Jerry's office.
I said, that looks interesting. I come from the 60s, so I wanted to see if this was real. And I decided I wanted to search for the heroes. I wanted to find the people that were there that were going to make a difference. And I found a lot of them. Then Occupy people noticed that there was a bill collector in their midst. So one day I was asked to attend a meeting of Occupy Wall Street, and they said that they had an idea they wanted to run past me.
That idea was the Rolling Jubilee, a crowdfunded effort to raise $50,000 to purchase $1 million of defaulted debt and abolish it. Occupy wanted to know if Jerry thought their plan was a good idea.
I didn't think much of it. $1 million worth of medical debt in my world isn't even a rounding error. I think it'll probably be seen as a gesture. They said, well, let's take a look at it through our eyes. If your medical debt were in that portfolio and forgiven, do you think that you would have considered it to be a gesture? And I said, what do you need?
What Occupy needed was expertise. They needed people who understood the debt collection industry. So Jerry called Craig, and together the pair worked with Occupy to make the idea of the Rolling Jubilee a reality. Instead of raising $50,000, Occupy was able to raise $700,000. That enabled Jerry and Craig to abolish over $40 million in medical, student, and payday loan debt. But then something unexpected happened.
So one day they came up to us and they said, well, we're going to close it down. We're going in another direction. And Craig and I looked at each other and we said, we can't let that happen. We were kind of hooked.
We said, we're going to have to do it ourselves. We'll probably be able to raise $200,000, $300,000, $500,000 a year like these Occupy Wall Street people did. Wasn't true. It's the hardest thing we ever did.
Eventually, Jerry and Craig were able to figure out how to raise enough money to start buying and abolishing medical debt, due in large part to this guy.
It is pretty clear by now, debt buying is a grimy business and badly needs more oversight, because as it stands, any idiot can get into it. And I can prove that to you because I'm an idiot and we started a debt buying company.
Which he used to abolish almost $15 million worth of debt through RIP.
When John Oliver brought us to everybody's attention, what became a serious attempt to make a difference became an amazing movement.
We've helped over 250,000 people get out of over $600 million of medical debt. So it took us a while to ramp up, but now we're going to reach $1 billion this year. So watch out.
So I don't know about you all, but for me, every time I see this video, I get chills. And so I'm so excited that we're partnering up with RIP Medical Debt to not only increase the protections here in Arizona, but also abolish medical debt to people here in Arizona. And so ways that people can help is that we are having a Giving Tuesday event on November 30th, that for every petition that is turned in, the signature will be worth double that amount. So instead of $100 per signature, it's going to be $200. If you are interested in sharing or collecting signatures, helping us qualify this initiative, please, please, please contact me. I would love to tell you more. Thank you everybody for your time, and I appreciate being able to share the work we're doing.
Thank you, Selena. That was very interesting, and I'm sure it will generate lots of comments and questions at the end of our session. Our next speaker is our final panelist, Margo Cowan. Margo graduated from the Antioch School of Law in Washington, D.C., where she was mentored by the renowned civil rights attorney Edward Morgan, who was known for his tireless representation of indigent defendants in capital murder cases. In the 60s, 70s, and 80s, she managed a farm workers' strike in San Diego, organized trans-border farm workers in the Tijuana-San Diego region, co-founded the Sanctuary Movement, and established the first in-detention defense project in El Centro, California, where she stopped the deportations of thousands of Salvadorans and Guatemalans fleeing the wars in Central America. Since 1993, Ms. Cowan has been a Pima County Public Defender. This year, she received the prestigious Michael Maggio Memorial Pro Bono Award from the American Immigration Lawyers Association for her outstanding work in providing pro bono representation in the immigration field. She co-founded No More Deaths, a well-known community-based volunteer organization in Southern Arizona, as well as Keep Tucson Together, a pro bono legal project intended to stop deportations and the separation of families in Southern Arizona. Since 2017, she has managed the Justice for All campaign in Pima County, working to collect 70,000 signatures so that the initiative may be included on the November 2022 ballot. She will discuss the Justice for All ballot initiative, which carries the slogan, "No one should have to go to court alone." Take it away, Margo.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And it's a great honor to be here with the League this morning. I just want to take a few minutes and tell you some things that I think you'll find shocking and what moved me to begin the Justice for All campaign. The process when someone is put in deportation proceedings is that there are allegations that are lodged that basically say you're out of status and you don't have legal permission to be in the United States. And it's a very important process because it doesn't presume that one is what unfortunately is called in the popular syntax, illegal. You know, illegal is a political brand that is race-based and hateful and is not reflective at all of some judicial decision that's been made in a particular case. In immigration court, immigration judges don't find people to be illegal. They find people to either qualify for some relief from removal or ineligible for relief from removal. And then there are steps that can be asked of the court and whoever is in the administration of the moment to grant other kind of permission to remain in the United States. I want to share some statistics with you that I find shocking because just here in Tucson Immigration Court, just our court in little old Tucson, Arizona, there were a bit more than 22,000 families put in removal proceedings in fiscal year 19. And I say fiscal year 19 because FY20 really was not reflective of the court's docket because the court was closed most of the year because of the pandemic. So about roughly 22,000 families were put in proceedings, and about 18,000 of those families stood alone. And what I mean by that is good folks went in to tell their story to the immigration judge, having no idea about what relief from removal or deportation they might have, what legal applications they could make, and what counted. What did the judge want to hear about who they are, who they were, and who their family members are when they came to the United States. Our clinic, I managed a pro bono community clinic called Keep Tucson Together. And we started really about 10 or 11 years ago when President Obama created the DACA program to help young people fill out their applications. And we met every Thursday at Pueblo High School for years and years and years. and our practice based on community volunteers and volunteer lawyers. Through that practice, we assisted thousands of DACA applicants and closed thousands of immigration cases that had been pending in the court for a long time. When the pandemic came, we had to move out of Pueblo, and so these last few years we've been doing the best we can to represent as many people as possible in immigration court. But when we were going full bore at Pueblo, a couple of scholars from the university came and did a study of the folks that came to the clinic, our clients, if you will. And they interviewed several thousand people, and they found that the average length of residency in Pima County of the study group that were put in deportation proceedings was 16 and a half years. So although we hear a lot in the media about people storming the border and they're coming and they're taking our jobs and they're committing crime and all of that, really what we're talking about is we're talking about our neighbors. We're talking about people that are integral players in our community in every respect. The work they do in our churches, the leadership they give in our communities, and they're mothers and fathers of US citizens, or spouses of US citizens, or grandparents of US citizens. And they are part of the fabric of who we are. And so depending on, unfortunately, depending on who is occupying the White House at the moment, and their degree of race hate that they perpetrate on folks when they put them in removal, good folks are standing before a judge without any idea how to defend themselves and no money to retain counsel. Now, I'm a member of the American Immigration Lawyers Association, and my colleagues, almost all of them are immigration lawyers in practice and in business, and very upstanding folk and do great work. But there's not enough people to represent everybody who can't afford to pay $10,000 or $20,000 to a lawyer to represent them. And I wish no ill will on my colleagues who are in business in practicing immigration law. That's their business. However, it's just not right, in my view, that folks in the community who don't have resources should stand alone. And so let me share with you the statistics from fiscal year 19, which is the last year when there were really significant statistics. And keep in mind that the average length of residency in Pima County for folks in removal, at least in the group that we studied, which was a significant sample group, is 16 and a half years. So there were 22,677 people put in removal in FY19. 18,059 of them went alone. The difference there is about 4,600. Of the 4,600, this little clinic that I manage, Keep Tucson Together, represented more or less 1,000 of those families at no charge. So that left 3,600 other folks that retained counsel. So between us and that 4,600, we won 62% of the time. So 62% of the time, folks who had a lawyer were able to stay in the United States because there was some relief from removal available for them under current law. And sometimes what happens is there's not a legal remedy to remain in the United States, but there is a legal remedy if you return to your country of origin and process through an American consul. So it's not just that 62 or 3% remained here with their families. It is that a number of those also had remedies outside of the United States that would allow them to come back. But because they were represented by a lawyer, they understood what their situation was and what relief was available. and how to go forward. On the other hand, and I think you'll find this shocking, it is shocking in such a profound sense that it really makes one stop. The other 18,059 people, 17,518 of them were ordered to leave the United States. In other words, 3% of the people that went by themselves were ordered to leave. Now, I'm not talking about 17,518 single people. I'm talking about 17,518 families that were torn apart. And I ask you, ask yourselves, who is it that you love the most in this world? Just think for a minute. Who do you love the most in this world? What in the world would you do if some judge said to you in a language, and I don't mean English or Spanish, I mean in legalese as compared to what the language that we're speaking at the moment, said to you, you have to leave, and you have to leave the person that you love the most in this world. What's that do to babies? What's that do to those kids? What's it do to the spouse that all of a sudden has to not be a mom or a dad of children, US citizen children, but also go into the workforce or pick up a second job or pick up a third job? I mean, we're talking about devastating thousands of families. And who are these people? These are our neighbors, for goodness sakes. These are not like anonymous folk. These are our neighbors. And so when it became clear that, one working and defending and advocating in immigration court and through political process, through immigration reform, and all of the various avenues that we lift up our voice, it's not enough to protect these 17,000 families, our neighbors that were torn apart, just not enough. We don't have enough voices. That was when it became clear to me that at least in Pima County, we should institutionalize the right to counsel for people who are in deportation proceedings and they're too poor to hire a lawyer. Mary mentioned that at the moment I serve as a Pima County Public Defender. That is a criminal defender. And our office is supported by appropriations from the Board of Supervisors and also a sliding scale that people can pay what they can pay based on their income into the county fund that funds the Pima County Public Defender. It should be the same model for people who reside in Pima County or are detained in Pima County and are put in removal proceedings. They should have a lawyer who represents them, and they should be assessed fees if they're able to pay some, and it should be based on indigency, so that if folks actually have funds, they can hire private counsel. They can hire my colleagues who will do great jobs. But if they don't, we can't allow them to stand alone and have their families torn apart, because they contribute to our community. So that's what we're doing. And we need 58,000 signatures. We need them by, I think, July 2nd. We're shooting for 70, so we have a good cushion. And we really would appreciate everyone's support. We think that this is something that should have happened a long time ago, but we are very proud to be part of making it today. Thank you all very much. I appreciate your time.
Excellent. Thank you, Margo. Another very interesting initiative. So we have one that's very local in Pima County, and we have one that's statewide. Selena had mentioned the opposition that she has come across. Margo, who's your main opposition that you've encountered on this initiative?
Thank you for the question, Mary. It's very interesting because at the moment we haven't encountered resistance. Privately, the immigration judges have told me, once you get on the ballot, we'll publicly endorse the initiative because it will be very helpful to us. And, you know, folks that typically are very conservative and fund very public conservative causes in Pima County, a lot of them hire undocumented workers. And they also have said to me privately, when you get on the ballot, come back and talk to me. So I think this is something that our community understands. And I think that if we can make the signatures, I think we win.
And so how have you started circulating petitions?
Well, we've put out the word to folks that have been involved in, interestingly enough, not necessarily political action kind of events, but folks that are involved in humanitarian work around undocumented people. And we've done a lot of work in churches, and the Democratic Party and all of the various legislative district groups have endorsed the initiative. A lot of support from the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and Hispanic business owners. So at the moment, we're sort of doing a grassroots organizing effort to get as many petitions out to folks as possible. We're about to kick off a 15 and 15 day campaign to try and have folks get 15 signatures in 15 days. So we're trying to be as creative as we can.
Okay, sounds great. Selena, to swing back to you, I know you're calling us from Phoenix, and I happened to be up in Phoenix at a conference, and someone asked me to sign your petition, but I hadn't really been exposed to it here in Pima County. So what are you doing to try to spread the word with the Arizona Healthcare Rising here in Southern Arizona?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So one of the things we've been doing is we've been building a coalition with organizations. I don't know if any of you know this wonderful woman named Amanda Villa. She is really well connected in the community in Tucson. But I've been phone banking, calling registered voters, and they've been collecting signatures that way. I am planning on being in Tucson on Monday. And I need to find a good location to sit in. So if anybody in Tucson is interested in picking up a petition, they can do that. So as soon as I find, if you're interested in picking up a petition in downtown Tucson, let me know and I will connect with you so that way we can meet there. But yes, it's a grassroots movement. We're spreading the word through social media, calls, and just connecting with people.
And of course, you also have a great website, healthcarerisingaz.org. And I noticed on there are maps that show the people who are working on it in various parts of the state. So if you want to find a petition to sign, that would be a good place to start. You also mentioned getting some resistance from the chamber. You know, this idea of medical debt is such a bipartisan issue. People are uninsured on both sides of the aisle, and people have medical debt on both in all parties, independents, Republicans, Democrats. We have diabetes and all kinds of diseases that cross party lines. So what is the biggest challenge you have in reaching a wide variety of people that this initiative might help?
Yeah, so that's a really great question, Mary. So we medical debt and healthcare insurance does not discriminate. So we actually have people who have joined Healthcare Rising Arizona as a contributing member from all parties, from the Green Party, from the Democrats, from the Independents to the Republicans. And people have told me, you know, there's something that needs to change. And so it's been amazing seeing everybody come together despite where we align with our political party. But we're all coming together because we know we need to fix healthcare. So definitely medical debt does not discriminate. It does not care. But yeah, we haven't had any challenges. We have, however, had challenges when it comes to Republicans supporting the work we're doing, but that's something that we're working with community members who are Republicans, having them push their representatives to support this ballot initiative.
Great. And of course, post-pandemic, we have elevated healthcare workers at sometimes to a high level of hero status. And, you know, we need to honor our healthcare workers and all the job they've done this last couple of years. I want to remind people they can put questions in the Q&A. We welcome questions from the audience, and also if you're watching on Facebook a live stream, you can put your comments in the questions in the comment section.
So Mary Rex asked the question, is the rising ballot initiatives due to the lack of action by legislature? The answer is yes. So the ballot initiatives is also called the Citizens Initiative because it's a way that regular constituents can put something on the ballot and we can either reform or create a law. One of the things that we did earlier this year as Healthcare Rising Arizona is we introduced a couple bills. We wanted to get healthcare workers COVID paid sick time off. A lot of them were going unpaid or having to use their own personal PTO, even though they got COVID at work. And so we introduced a couple bills and none of them moved forward to a hearing, which was very disappointing. So here we are using our power of a ballot initiative to reform the laws that have to do with medical debt.
Excellent. And Margo, here's a question for you. Has your ballot initiative gained any nationwide support or attention? It's such a unique idea.
Yes, there's a national movement called Universal Representation that's started a couple of years ago, but no one has tried no one has tried to institutionalize the right to counsel through voter action. It is universal representation is typically funded by city councils or boards of supervisors. And my thinking about that was that's great when we have friends in office, but when we don't, we probably lose that support, which is why we went this direction. And the answer to your question is we have not had national attention, but I'm looking for some handles. So if anybody has some ideas about that, it would be great to send me a note. You know, I'm certain once we get on the ballot and we really begin campaigning about this, that there will be a lot of attention. You know, many of the local elected officials and city council, local state legislators, board of supervisors, school boards are very supportive of this because they all have to deal with in their jurisdictions the tremendous suffering that occurs when families are torn apart. So our community, I believe, understands in a really profound way how important this is. But if anybody has ideas how we take this to the national stage, please get in touch with me.
If anybody is on a first name basis with Rachel, let's get
There you go.
let's get some publicity here. I want to remind people that we can't have a verbal questions here, so raising your hand doesn't help us. You need to put your question in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen, and then we'll see your question. Susan asks, on the, Selena, on your initiative, she asks, do you have any statistics on the percentage of people with medical debt who are single moms?
Ooh, that is also a really good question. I don't have a personal stat, but I do have a stat of how many people currently have medical debt in collections. And so I know that 2/3 of all bankruptcies are tied to debt from healthcare costs. 18% of Arizonans have medical bills past due. And I believe 1 in 6 Arizonans have medical debt in general. As far as single moms, I don't know, but I've had a lot of stories that have been shared with me. And the one I can think about the most is the single mom of 3 children who's a teacher living paycheck to paycheck, trying to pay her mortgage, trying to pay medical bills for a baby she just had, trying to pay for childcare. There's a lot of similar stories out there.
And it was interesting that you mentioned the myth that people say, well, we have the Affordable Care Act now. People have insurance through their employers. And a lot of times it can be the copay that can really hurt people. Even insured people have problems with medical debt.
Yes, and I forgot to mention one last thing. The number 5 top offender for medical debt is childbirth. Childbirth is why people go into medical debt. The number 5 reason, or the number 5 on that top list.
Wow. Here's another question. Of course, getting an initiative up and running is clearly not an easy task. It obviously takes a lot of time, work, and commitment, organization, and funding. Given all this, was for each of you, was there some sort of preliminary feasibility study to assess the likelihood of getting the initiative on the ballot and approved by voters on the election day, or do you just are you just proceeding believing that your initiative is clearly needed on its merits and will succeed once the message reaches the voters? Margo, you want to start with that? Any research done ahead of time by the public defender's office on whether this would work or not?
I'm just kind of laughing because a colleague of mine does election law, and she said you have to do all these things. You have to test the waters and all of that. And I said, but I can't, because this is an imperative. So I have to try. I would love to test the waters. I would love to have a lot of money and find out that this is easy and all of that. So the traditional way that one initiates these campaigns is to do that and to run some focus groups and to test messaging and all of those kinds of things. My experience in community is sometimes we don't have time for such things, and we rarely have money for such things. But this is an imperative, and so we all that are throwing our heart into it just have to figure out how to make it work.
Selena, did anybody in your group have to do any research ahead of time to see if this was going to fly?
Yeah, so we are sponsored by SEIU United Healthcare Workers, which is the union of healthcare workers in California. We are fortunate enough that they were able to pay for researchers and had poll done as well. So we found out that about 70% of Arizonans would support this initiative, with Republicans being more supportive than Democrats, which I found was interesting. But yes, we found that it polled really well.
And here's a question for Cindy. Do you have any idea what percentage of the initiatives get enough signatures to appear on the ballot? Do we have any statistics on that? You need to unmute.
I'm sorry. There may be. I have seen it on certain websites. I did not include that. But if the questioner would like the answer, just put your name and email in the chat room, and I will be happy to look it up and send you the information.
Here's another question. The initiative to fund public schools in Arizona was ruled by the courts to be legally improper. Are there legal authorities available to review ballot measures language for constitutionality and other legal qualifications?
Yes, that is one of the options after the person who is trying to file an initiative with the state. You can go to, let me get the exact name. It is the Arizona Legislative Review Council that will look at your language and make sure that everything is in order.
Excellent. Here's another comment. The legislature bends over backwards to make initiatives more and more difficult to get on the ballot. This seems to be the trend. One tactic that failed last time was to require for statewide initiatives that a certain number of signatures be gathered from each county in Arizona. You touched on that, Cindy. Also, we've heard about the strict adherence about the rules for petitions, but these requirements don't apply for nominating petitions for candidates. Those are much easier. You know, the other thing that's a little more easier for nominating petitions for candidates is they can do it online, which is very helpful, of course, during a pandemic. Is there any movement to start to have petition signing online, or is that a dream? And you need to unmute.
Yeah, that is a dream. Nobody that I have discussed this with has brought that up as something that is being tried. It's a little different to throw a candidate on a ballot as opposed to changing a law. Yeah, that's the only thing I can think of, that it's just not as, let's say it's not as imperative to get the exact number of signatures as it is for somebody who's trying to put a law on the books.
Here's another question. If utility companies or other powerful interest groups oppose a measure, Selena mentioned the Chamber of Commerce, what can a group with little funding do to get their message to the voters? I guess this is all about
it's very difficult. You have to wear out your shoe leather, basically, which I think is not a bad idea, is to go to door, because I think that these days, of course, people don't open their doors, but it is difficult without money to fight some of the larger people groups that oppose your point of view. But if you talk to, you just have to keep talking and trying, and that's the best that can be done.
If your initiatives garner enough signatures to appear on the ballot and then are approved in the election, do you think the Arizona State Legislature or another government body or official might try to nullify or countermand them with conflicting state laws or executive order?
Well, they already did try with the 208 with the 3.5% surcharge that was passed by the citizenry. And they passed that flat tax law, or approximating a flat tax. Prior to that, I heard a rumor that they were planning on, and they have done this in the past, they've withdrawn the budgetary amounts that have been allocated to whatever issue is being on the table at the time, so that whatever money is raised by that issue is not in addition to the budget, it becomes the only money that's available. And that's just wrong. I mean, the budget is the budget, and they shouldn't be allowed to fool around with it as they do. And it's unfortunate that we just have to keep working at it and making it harder and harder for the legislature to obfuscate the citizens' will, as it might be. And right now, all there is to vote for your down ballot, which is one of the problems that I think every jurisdiction has, is that people vote for the president and then they just ignore their local. And you can't avoid your local because everything is local. We used to have a saying back in the day, think globally, act locally. And that's how we have to do it, from the grassroots up. So we just have to keep educating and keep trying.
And I think that's a big part of the League of Women Voters mission, is to educate the voters, young and old. And I'm really excited to see somebody young like Selena, such a politically active community organizer. We have Margo, who's been doing it for many decades, and then the new generation jumping in there and getting politically active. I want to also remind people again, if they do have questions, they can. We still have a little more time. They can put them in the Q&A box on the bottom, not in the chat. But we are getting people who are very excited about these two issues, and they're asking how they can get involved, how they can find contact information for the Justice for All initiative. You can go to Pima County justiceforall.org, and they have contact information on there. You're able to make donations. Margot's email address is pimajusticeforall@gmail.com. And we're going to post this contact information for both of these groups on our website after this webinar is over. And of course, Selena's contact information is she's given us her number also. If you're interested in tracking down a petition, her number is 480-849-3770. And their website is healthcarerisingaz.org. And you can make donations on that site, and you can find out where things are happening in Southern Arizona. Just looking to see if we have any other comments. For a citizen group or group of citizens hoping to create a ballot initiative, what advice would you give them? Margo, I'm a little bit confused that it says you've been working on this particular initiative since 2017. Do you, what was the idea about signatures that were gotten in previous years? Were you able to use those for this initiative?
That's a great question. First, I thought that when Richard Elias, the late Richard Elias, was with us, he was a very enthusiastic supporter, and he was sort of leading me, although I had my doubts, to have the Board of Supervisors fund this first, and then get it established, and then go to the voters. And we only had two votes on the board, his and another member, and so we decided, he and I, that wasn't going to work, and that was when we decided to run it as a citizen initiative, and we kicked it off in 2019, and Richard kicked it off, and collected, you always collect a bunch of signatures in the beginning when you start one of these. And we just the campaign was really picking up steam, and then Richard passed and the pandemic came. And so all of those signatures that we had collected obviously expired at the due date, which was in July of last year. And we just decided to keep at it.
Selena, do you have any advice for people who are interested in this process? And I'd also like to hear your comments about how do we get young voters motivated to participate in this type of voter initiative?
Yeah, so those are good questions. We have currently been endorsed by the Arizona Student Association. They are a group of students across Arizona who are also working on their own initiative to cap tuition rates and fees for 4 years. But a lot of these young, amazing students have been helping collect signatures for this, because although they're currently covered under their parents' insurance or have healthcare insurance, they know that they can be impacted by medical debt in the future. So that's one way we've been engaging. We've been, like I said before, we've been having events all across Arizona, drive-up events. We've been at the library, we've been at the fair, we've been at Pride. And so it's a way to engage young people to come and get involved, get familiar with the ballot initiative process.
We also need to remind ourselves that young people have medical debt. When I envision medical bills, I think of somebody my age, and young people get caught up in medical debt also. Yeah, I want to also talk about this YouTube video you showed. This Rest in Peace medical debt group is so interesting. Came out of Occupy Wall Street, which was quite a long time ago. These gentlemen are so interesting because they used to be debt collectors and probably made their family fortune in the debt collection business. They mentioned that. And yet they were curious about the Occupy Wall Street movement, went down and talked to these people and got involved now in a very big way. So this is a very exciting announcement that they're jumping on this in Arizona. And I'm sure this YouTube video plus the involvement with John Oliver, that I'm sure got a lot of publicity when he did that. I'm a big John Oliver fan. So your peers and your coworkers at Healthcare Rising Arizona must be excited about this Rest in Peace medical debt group.
Yeah, we're very excited. It all started with an idea and we reached out to them and we've partnered up. So that means that people here in Arizona are going to be receiving a yellow envelope that says their medical debt have been abolished thanks to Rest in Peace medical debt and Healthcare Rising Arizona. And so it's a great way for us to take action and actually help the people that have medical debt. And for some people, it's a burden. I know that when I had student debt, I was always stressed out about it. I thought I would never be able to buy a house. I had to buy a car at 16% interest. And I know that that's the case for a lot of people with medical debt. It's going to help a lot of people.
You mentioned the Stop Surprise Billing initiative that where the ballots were tossed. So was that addressed at the federal level? That topic seems familiar to me. I don't know if it's whatever happened with that.
Yeah, so it was as far as the Stop Surprise Billing.
Mm-hmm.
So from what I've been hearing is next year a law is coming into motion that's supposed to stop surprise spilling. I have not really taken a look at it in depth. So that's one way it's being addressed. Personally, when we faced scrutiny, it was at the Arizona Capitol. And even though we had enough signatures per Katie Hobbs, who's Secretary of State, our ballot initiative was still tossed.
That's another bipartisan issue, surprise billing. You know, I'd also like to mention another ballot initiative that's in the works, which is the Stop Dark Money campaign under Terry Goddard. This is limiting dark money in Arizona. This has had to come back a second time around, I guess. And you can stay tuned to the League of Women Voters for their educating voters on all the initiatives once we see what's on the ballot. We'll be having other voter education programs and other opportunities to discuss other initiatives, that's for sure. Yeah, one of our members mentioned it's the third or fourth time around. I'm sure Mr. Goddard is a little sick of this. You know, I recently did some research on the Citizen Clear Election Commission, which you know, and the League of Women Voters was very instrumental in getting the signatures and getting that passed. So they're not strangers to community organizing and addressing voter issues. I like to call the way we are making initiatives difficult, more and more difficult, voter suppression Arizona style. So Margot, would you like to make, well, let me start first with Cindy. Would you like to make a closing comment before we close about your research on ballot initiatives in Arizona?
Yes, I would just like to say that anybody who sees this forum should go out and make sure that everybody votes down ballot, and not to ignore local issues, because this is what really affects your life much more than other issues that you wouldn't think of not voting for, such as president or your senator. But anything that's local is going to affect you at a very, very visceral level. So please make sure that everybody votes down ballot.
I have one more question for Margot. Actually, someone asked if Lin-Manuel Miranda was supporting Justice for All initiative in Pima County. Is that correct? Or was it just Justice for All campaign was the newspaper wording? Is he given?
Yeah, that was great. I was sitting at my desk at the Public Defender one morning and his father called, and I answered the phone and he spoke to me in Spanish, and I thought, you know, maybe this is one of my clients or somebody, whomever. And no, their family has endorsed the campaign, and they initially gave us $25,000, and I have a sense that some more might be coming along. You know, Linda Ronstadt has endorsed the campaign. She, while she was able, had done a lot of work with Samaritans in the desert, and it's fairly humbling, but it also is very exciting that folks understand what this means to families, and you know, they don't sit out the discussion of what it means to families. And yes, the family has endorsed the campaign, and we really appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciated that you mentioned the average length of stay for these people is 16.5 years in the United States. Plenty of time to be part of the community, have families. These are our neighbors. You talk about family values. This is really what it's all about. Selena, would you like to make a closing comment? We're almost out of time.
Of course. Yeah, I would like to thank Margo. Thank you for doing this. I am a child of immigrant parents. A lot of my family are immigrants, undocumented, had to go through the difficult process of becoming a resident, some of them citizens. So I really know how difficult it is and how much of a bad reputation immigrants get, even though they're hardworking families and they're your neighbors. They're the people who make this country run and make this country amazing. But thank you for all the work you're doing. As far as for healthcare justice, Arizona, we are looking for more volunteers. We want people to be a part of this. So you can contribute by helping collect signatures. And it's an amazing opportunity to give back. A lot of people give back money for Giving Tuesday to nonprofit organizations. We're asking people to help collect signatures, and that could be your contribution. If you are interested in becoming a contributing member, people are giving small amounts, anywhere from $10 to $25 a month, or a one-time contribution as well. So if you were interested, go onto our website, send me a text if you want me to help you out. But I am planning to take a Tucson trip on Monday. So if you want to meet up, let me know, and we can make sure we make that happen. Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Excellent. Thank you for presenting your initiative. And so thank you for a lively discussion, and thanks to all who sent in questions and comments. If you want to share the program with others, it will be available on the League website, which is lwvtucson.org, and the League's YouTube channel in a few days. We will also be posting the contact information, websites, and email addresses for the initiatives. I want to acknowledge the League committee that organized today's program, including Tracy Peterson and Judy Wood, and the chair of the voter education program, Elizabeth Zagura. Thanks to Jeremy Biddle and Adrian Barton as our tech hosts, and Susan Black for publicity. And lastly, a big thanks to our three panelists, Cindy Soffrin, Celina Martinez Washburn, and Margo Cowan, for your commitment to voter education, your community organizing, and your interesting presentations. Tune into the next voter education program. That would be January 15th. It's entitled Wasting Money, Wasting Lives, How We Fix Arizona's Criminal Justice System. Should be a good one. Mark your calendar. And please consider becoming a member of the League of Women Voters. Thank you for attending.